Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen and Kat and the whole team. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. I love what I do. I love getting to talk about it. And so it's always like a privilege that I get to kind of share with bigger and broader audiences all over. So we are here today to talk about effectively partnering with all stakeholders to create quality of life for everyone. And we're going to break down exactly what that means here in just a moment. So I'm really glad that you're here. You're thinking about stakeholders, you're thinking about families and quality of life. You know, we wish that for all of you as well. So I'm Kimerli Breen, and I've been doing work of tiered supports in a variety of ways for over 20 years. I'm a school counselor and a school psychologist. I do a lot of this kind of work, training, coaching people all around the country. But I got started in this work in some agencies that are probably a lot more similar to what many of you do. And some of these groups you may have heard of before. So I was just sharing with someone the other day that when I was in college, I volunteered with a group called Compeer. And the idea there was that you would be matched up with someone who had some pretty significant mental health challenges, and you would help them go out into the community and basically have a good quality of life. You would be like their friend, compeer, once a week. And so in college, on the weekends, I would pick up my friend from compeer. She had schizophrenia and some other challenges, and we would do whatever she wanted. We would go roller skating or go to the mall. And from a pretty early age, it really stamped on me that behavior can change, that the environment can help people in amazing ways, and that we all play these like really powerful roles in each other's lives where we can help people navigate the world and navigate whatever challenges they have, help them leverage their strengths in some amazing ways. So not only did she have a better quality of life because she was in the program, but I clearly had a better quality of life because I got to experience that with her. And then that really led me into some work with the ARC in New York. Again, this is way back, longer than 20 years ago. And again, I had this opportunity to take people out in the community, help them, learn how to use the public bus and public transportation, and go out to restaurants and use the gym at the YMCA. And so I was learning what I now do for work. I was learning about these behavioral support strategies that so many of you are completely invested in, this focus on what's good and positive. And so I'm really, really grateful for all of those experiences because I then had, I have many nieces and nephews, but my youngest nephew has autism. And so I felt like I was, pretty able to help my sister support him and really give them a pretty good quality of life. And then because of the way the universe works, all of this turns out it was just my training to have my son, who is now 12. So this picture is just from like 2 weeks ago. We went to New York to visit. This is my nephew, Joey, who has autism, who's 22. He's now getting his associate's degree. And my son, Orion, who's 12. So they're 10 years apart. And my son also has autism, as well as some anxiety and has some other mental health kinds of challenges that we're all kind of still learning and navigating together. And so it's hard to express to other people how much, regardless of these details I share, they have so many strengths and so many preferences that we help leverage in real time that we all have a great quality of life. So we have fun together. And I think there are so many people out there who might have some stereotypes about individuals, for example, with autism. And if they looked at this picture, they might not think that these were two boys, right, who were cousins, who had that kind of uniqueness in their life. And that's how my son describes it, is autism just makes him super unique. And he'll go on and tell you all of the unique skills he has and benefits he has from having that aspect in his life. So I wish the same thing for all of you. We all have strengths. We all have challenges. Day to day, we have things we're trying to kind of conquer or survive or thrive in, and regardless of all those other details. So we're really grateful you're here. We hope you're taking care of yourselves in any big or small ways that you can. And I love this quote. It's been helping me recently, especially in the last year or so. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And that's what I wish for all of you, to just have that sort of peace that we all can be part of positive change in our own lives and in the lives of others. And we are good enough. We have what we need. We just have to leverage what we have. And so um, a lot of young people out there right now have this message that maybe they aren't enough. So I think everything we can do to make sure people understand you are enough, you have what you need, and we're going to make the most of things as we can. And so everyone's quality of life matters, and all of your lives need to be as fulfilling and purposeful and meaningful as possible so that you can bring that to the people you support. And so this is the description that Kathleen and I put together for our session here today. We know that the work we all do within this idea of tiered supports, it started long ago with this idea that there were people out there, there were groups trying to help change the behavior of others in very aversive ways, right? And that still exists in many ways, on the small level in people's homes to the big level in terms of agencies and organizations. And not only was that not good for the people who needed support to have these sort of negative aversive strategies used on them, but the research was really clear that it was also really bad for the people who were using the aversive strategies. And so to me, that's how you know when you're on the right path, is if the strategy you all are using to support others doesn't just feel right for them, but also makes you feel good about what you're doing and about your day, right? It keeps you in a good place and a good space. And at the end of the day, like, you both enjoyed the day being together, even if there were things that, you were trying to kind of improve and conquer in some way. So I'm also very aware that there are so many great ideas that have yet to be said out loud, yet to be published, so much great work that's yet to be researched. And so every time I work with a group, I really want to be clear to you and invite you to co-construct with me and with this group today. So if, as I'm talking about something, you get a great new idea that's even maybe just a little bit related to what I'm saying, don't hesitate to put it in the chat box, to share that idea, to write down your own note, take it back to your team. So Kathleen and I hope that this gives you lots of ideas and strategies, but that it also helps spark your own great idea. So please know we are all here for a reason. We all have things to contribute. And so it's not just about listening and learning to what myself or others say, but it's really about taking that information and making your own new great idea. So I look forward to hearing some of that from you all, maybe after you come back from breakout rooms, maybe at the very end of our session. So please don't hesitate to be taking those notes. So the other sort of thing I want to front load before we really dive into kind of a little bit of an experiential session here today, is this idea that no matter what we're trying to do better, whether it's in our own personal lives, whether it's at work, whether it's on behalf of someone else, there are these three basic areas that you always want to be at least attending to a bit. And so data helps us sort of set goals, helps us understand why we would take something on. So right now, the topic is stakeholder partnerships, and that's going to include family partnerships as well as the other people you work with and the other maybe people and organizations that support the young people you support and the people of all ages that you support. So data helps us understand, why would we take that on, and how do we know when something is getting better? And so I would encourage everyone here, you probably are very data driven in all kinds of ways. It doesn't always have to be big, like a big undertaking. Sometimes it can just be kind of taking a personal note or asking one of your stakeholders, well, about how often does that happen? And then after you've worked together a little bit, hey, about how often does that happen now? Because I'm always amazed at how quickly we forget progress. I don't know why that happens, but you'll have a situation where the problem occurs 10 times a week. It goes down to 5 times a week, but the people in the environment still feel like it's a big problem without celebrating, like, hey, we've really made that a lot better. Or maybe the person's attempting some skill they can't do it. And then they slowly start to be able to do it, but in their mind, they're still judging themselves for not being perfect with it. So I use data as a way to make sure we're celebrating along the way. And it's a good reminder for me as a parent as well about growth. So the practices are the things we do with the people, we do for the people we support. So those are like your tools of choice. You have all these great practices in there. So you're ready. You have this tool to pull out and use as needed, and you have this tool to use to prevent challenges. But the systems are really about us. It's about the people you work with, your colleagues, supervisors, the people maybe you supervise. How are we taking care of the people who take care of other people, right? How are we making sure that the people at work have what they need and that they're giving the trainings and the skills so that they are able to get those practices to others? So I hope as we go through today, at different times, you might be thinking, oh, that's kind of more about systems. That's something we could do in our office. That's something we could do as colleagues and as a team. And then sometimes these will be practices that you're going to be using with other people. So I'm going to give you a moment to just reflect on that, what we've said so far today. So far we offered this construct of systems, data, and practices. You might be writing that down so that as you take notes, maybe during this session, you might be thinking of what goes under each of those three areas. And then we really made this point that quality of life matters for everyone, and that it turns out that if one person's quality of life is not good, it's going to affect the other people in that environment as well. And that's why there's this mutual benefit for us taking care of each other well. Okay, so we want to sort of practice that concept in this group. We care about your quality of life as well. So we want to check in with you really quickly and see how you're feeling. I'm going to use what's called the mood meter, and I'll talk with you more about all of this here in just a moment. I'm going to show you this picture, and when I do, I want you to figure out what your current mood is, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure this out, so I'm going to start prepping you for it. Right now, I want you to maybe just kind of like, if your shoulders are up, maybe let your shoulders kind of drop down. Maybe you want to take like a deep breath or two. You kind of want to do like a body scan. Like, does anything hurt? Does anything feel really good and healthy? Like, how's the body feeling? How are you feeling? I'm going to show you this picture, but I don't want you to share your mood meter word with us. So please do not write anything into the chat box yet. Okay, so you're not going to write down your mood meter word yet. So this is called the mood meter. It comes from Dr. Mark Brackett out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. This comes from the book Permission to Feel. And so I'm not associated with this group, but I'm a fan of their work. And so if you want a nice summer read, I think it's a nice easy read, and it's good to use it for yourself as well as for others. So the way you use this mood meter, you're going to take your finger. You're going to go to the bottom corner where the energy and pleasantness arrows meet. And first, you're going to ask yourself, how much energy do I have right now? And you're going to go up, kind of consider it like a scale from 1 to 10. How high up on the energy scale are you? How low are you? So kind of figure out how much energy you have first, and give yourself a moment to figure that out. And then go across for how much pleasantness you're currently feeling. So energy and then pleasantness again as like a scale of like 1 to 10. And then you should be landing on a word. So if you use this in the future, remember, you don't look at it and choose a word that you kind of hope that you feel or want to feel. You let the word choose you. And you do that by really indicating amount of energy and pleasantness. So I'm going to give you a moment. You're not going to write this in the chat box, but I would love it if you would write it down on a piece of paper. What is your current mood? And there's so much more to be said about this that I won't get into today. The book goes into more detail about how often do we ask someone, how are you feeling? And within a fraction of a second, the person says, good. And if you notice, the word good is not on here as a feeling, right? And so all day long, inadvertently sort of reinforce each other to not really check in with how we really feel. And I'll tell you, I've used this with my son, and what I realized is that he he thinks that I want him to always be happy. So that's something we're working on as a family. I tend to have a pretty up mood, and so I think he's interpreted that as like I want, and I want him to be happy. I want him to be content. So we just talked about this the other day. You don't have to be like ha ha happy, but I do want as a parent for you to be okay, right? So we're navigating that language. But using this with my son, it was amazing that for one of the first times, it really made him feel empowered to be able to say he was peeved. So I remember we had an interaction and I could tell something wasn't right, but he just sort of got quiet and went on to something else. And so I took out the mood meter and we did the exercise and he landed on peeved. And then that helped to open up. I said, "Oh, when I was doing that, did I make you feel peeved?" And he said, "Yes. So what could I do differently next time?" And what I'm guilty of as a parent is I give unsolicited advice or unsolicited tips, right? So he's like, sometimes I don't want a tip, understandably. And so I peeved him by giving these unsolicited tips. So I was really grateful to have the mood meter because if it wasn't for this, I honestly don't think that ever would have come out. I don't think he would have ever expressed this negative feeling towards me. I wouldn't have realized I was doing this thing that annoys him. So I was really grateful. So you can print this at home. You can use it in your own household. You can use it with other people. Um, so this is my thank you slide. All throughout today, I'll show some maybe silly or fun slides to say thank you. And this I'm showing as a way to say it's okay. Whatever that mood is, whatever feeling you're in, it's okay, right? All throughout our day, we have different moods and different feelings that come through. So we are not our mood. It's okay to have all different kinds of feelings and moods. Um, so the work of Mark Brackett and team, they said, okay, so it's more than that. We need to be able to name our feelings. But what if it's not a great feeling for what's in front of you right now? So if you see here, the steps of ruler are to recognize our emotions and emotions of others, to understand what might cause those emotions, to then label those emotions. And that's what the mood meter does. It helps us put a word on that emotion. So for my son, that was really helpful to be able to have those words there to choose from. And then that led to him being able to express his emotion. And now, if you happen to be in a mood that isn't great for the moment, the last step is, can you regulate your mood? So even though it's okay to have all the various feelings, you've all probably been there where if you're really irritated, frustrated, maybe mad when you get to work, that's probably not a great mood to be in if you're trying to support another person who might have their own challenges that they're dealing with. So how do we regulate? So I'm going to ask everyone right now to just reflect when you look at the words you wrote down. Are you in a good, like appropriate, acceptable, helpful mood for this online conference today? Right? So just be thinking like whatever mood I wrote down, which you don't have to share with us, is that good for like the next, hour or so with online, being in an online session with us? And if not, what could you do to regulate that mood just really briefly right now? And so I'm going to set this little timer. You're going to see this green circle start to fill in on the slide. It's going to be 1 minute. I would typically play music, but I know Kathleen wants to post this online and I can't really just share any music. So I'm going to ask you if you want on your own phone, you could go into Spotify, whatever you use, and play a song for the next minute. If you have like your songs that really help you get awake and get kind of optimistic and positive. So you can keep cameras on or off. It's only going to be a really quick 1 minute. But what could you do in this 1 minute that would either help maintain your good mood for the next hour of online, or would get you in a better mood for online learning? So the timer is starting. We have about 1 minute. Some of you might want to stretch. You might want to drink some more water. Might have some coffee. what would put you in a slightly better mood for this next 1 hour? Sometimes just standing up from your chair, touching your toes, and coming right back down to sit down again does a world of good. And you might hear a little ding when this timer's up. So I didn't ask you to type into the chat the things you might do to help regulate your emotion because I really wanted you to be doing them, right? I wanted you to be experiencing it and doing whatever you need to feel better in this moment. But when you go back to your teams, you could do this exact same activity if you'd like. You're going to have the PowerPoint from my session today in PowerPoint form. You can use it however you'd like. And you could go through this exact same steps with your team. And then you could ask people to share what are some of those things that they do to regulate. And sometimes you can borrow ideas from each other. That can be sometimes nice and helpful to see. So I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for doing that with us. And for some of you, maybe this picture is making you feel a little bit better. I love this picture so much. All right, so we might not be 100% there yet, right? We've thought about our mood. Sometimes just tapping in and knowing how you're feeling helps improve your mood. And then you thought about what you could do. Maybe some of you did something. You drank some water, you stood up, you stretched. Maybe some of you listened to some music. We looked at a nice little picture there. I refer to this little guy as my mood regulator, so I appreciate him and his mother for putting this on YouTube. So I'm going to share a little quick mood regulator with you. Who's happy this morning, aren't you, monkey? Lucas! All right, so I always have to see it one more time. Lucas is happy this morning, aren't you, monkey? Lucas! Now, many of you probably know we have this thing of mirror neurons where we actually sometimes like take the emotion that we see. So I'm going to do one last one. I apologize. Lucas is happy this morning, aren't you, monkey? Lucas! So when his face lights up, right? And I love a grumpy baby. It's so cute. When his face lights up, some of you might have found yourself smiling just along with him. I saw Kathleen and I love it, right? You can feel it. You can feel that joy. Okay, so just for fun, let's do the mood meter one more time. So I know it's only been a few minutes since we did it the first time, but don't worry about what you did the first time. Just go ahead and check in with your body. What's your energy and what's your pleasantness? And find your new word. Find your word for the moment, right? So what's your word for the moment right now? Energy, pleasantness, land on your word for the moment. I'll give you another second to find that. All right, so now, if you're comfortable, we invite you in the chat. You can share your mood word right now. What was that second word you wrote down? Or you could write your first word and your second word to see was there any change. And then you could let us know, did you notice a change? Did you move on the mood meter between the first time and the second time? So go ahead and tell us in the chat box. I'm loving these words. I love balance and fulfilled. Love it. Apathetic to easygoing. That is a wonderful shift. Love that. Secure to chill. Beautiful. Upbeat to motivated. Thank you all for sharing this. You are helping me by sharing this. Lively, the deep breaths and the baby help. Love it. Chill to joyful. Those are great examples of like the energy going up a little bit, the pleasantness going over a little bit. Hopeful to focused. I love it. Ecstatic. Love it. Oh my gosh. Tired to calm. what a great example. I mean, I could comment on all of these. So think of the difference between going to work and being tired, feeling tired versus feeling calm. Huge difference, right? Um, so in it, all these emotions are okay at different times, but like for some of your moments, you would definitely rather be calm than tired, right? Um, so thank you all for sharing. So we're not done. So consider like maybe at the end or maybe in a little while, kind of checking on the mood meter again. But I want to know it was really quick. Like how many minutes was between the first and the second mood meter? Maybe 5 minutes tops. And so imagine what we could do for ourselves and for those we work with and those we support if we actually kept something like, even just kept the conversation um, in the forefront. How are we really feeling? What could we do about that feeling? And then checking in again to see if that regulation works. So I am really grateful for all of you playing along with us, and thank you for sharing in the chat box. I will say thank you throughout today's session with some pictures. This is another one I just absolutely love. And so for me, sometimes I'll look at pictures if I'm feeling like I need to be uplifted a little bit, or I'll listen to some music. And we hope that all of you are just feeling sort of empowered and encouraged to find your ways to regulate, right? Like, what are the ways? And I agree. I wish I was there right now swimming too. So we want to let you talk with each other about this, right? Because we know we actually learn more from talking than listening because it lets you process the information and then you can learn from others as well. So I would love it in a breakout room. Kat's going to help us out. You're all going to get into small groups of like 5 or 6 people each. You're going to have about 10 minutes to talk with each other. Please do use this time to connect with each other, kind of fill your cup. And so, why do you think it might be helpful to facilitate better moods for the individuals who you support? Why do you think it might be good to facilitate better moods for the people who support other people? Right? That one I think is probably one of the most important. And then, even for families and caregivers, do you think that most of the families you work with, or the parents and caregivers of the people who you support, do you think they're aware of how kind of quickly and easily we could regulate emotion? Or do you think, like so many people, they might feel like a victim of emotion, like the emotion happens to them and they don't really feel like they have much control over that. So when you're in your breakout rooms, please consider sharing any new ideas. Did this trigger any new thoughts, ideas for you? And of course, the ultimate idea is how could we start bringing this back to the people we support and the people we work with. So please enjoy a 10-minute breakout with colleagues and friends, and we will see you back.
Everyone should get a prompt and you can just click and you'll end up in that other room and we'll just bring you back.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathleen. So click accept or whatever that button says, and then we'll see you back in 10. Everyone, thanks for coming back in. You are welcome to say anything in the chat box if you want. If you were like right in the middle of saying something brilliant or someone else was and you got cut off, you're welcome to finish a little bit of that in the chat box and share anything there. You could thank your breakout room teammates or finish and add to an idea in any way you there. So thank you so much for engaging with people. Love that you had a great discussion. Thank you for that. We were chatting and hanging out here in the main room a little bit as well. And so I'm going to say thank you for your time in your breakout. Thanks for being vulnerable to talk with each other. being vulnerable is hard, but it is worth it. It's always worth it, and you get more out of every conversation. So thank you for just being willing to share your own thoughts and ideas, and thanks for coming back in here. And I was just saying to Ashley that we were talking about like technology problems, right? In this new world of working online. It happens to all of us at different times. And so part of the reason that we spend, so much time in this first session around mood and emotion and regulation is because we know that stress is antithetical to deep learning. It interferes with our brain's ability to process new information, recall prior knowledge, right? Have any of you ever been there? Like, this thing, this answer, but you can't pull it up, you can't recall it, and perform higher cognitive tasks, which many things fall under that category. If we want to maximize learning, we need to minimize stress. And so when you think about it, if you're working with an individual and helping them learn new skills, if you're working with an individual and helping them navigate their community and have greater independence or work on different challenges, we don't want that to be a stressful situation. And so we hope that you feel a little empowered here with the first part of our session to talk about how are you feeling? Show me on the mood meter. Let's regulate first before we continue, right? Let's check in with each other first before we keep going. And so this is really what my wish is, that all of the knowledge all of you have and all of us have in terms of professionals, that we would share that same knowledge with families and caregivers and other stakeholders, because so many people haven't learned about this. It's not what they went to school for. It's not what they read about, and so they don't really have a background for it. And what we know is that the family life is our first school for emotional learning. So not only do young people learn about emotion, and kind of how to feel about themselves and how to feel about others from their family, but also from the example set by looking at adult relationships at home. And so, you could think of this applying also to any kind of living situation. So anytime we're living with others or in an environment, and I'm going to pause. Thanks, just because there's a little echo there. All good now. That the people that we're being raised with, that we're living with, are really having a big impact on how we think of ourselves and how we navigate relationships. So this research was really interesting to me and has been really inspiring. It's from Mark Duran, and there's a book called Optimistic Parenting. And what they say in this book is that teaching parents or caregivers to be more optimistic about their child, or in this case, it could be for adults as well, and their own abilities led to much better results with their children's behavior problems. Although a number of factors seem to contribute to the outcomes for these children, the best predictor of successful outcomes was parental optimism. And I'm going to take the extension on that to say not just parents, but all caregivers, and not just family caregivers, but anyone who's in our environment with us, who's there to support us. So we can pick up on that from each other, right? We can tell if someone is optimistic about us learning this new skill. We can tell if someone's optimistic about our future or not. And so that's a pretty big outcome, to say that regardless of the intervention used, regardless of the medication, regardless of all these other factors, the optimism of the person supporting you had a huge impact on that person's response to the intervention. And so, Tammy, thank you for that feedback. I love to hear from you guys in the chat, so please do. I've been in this work for quite a while, and yet, for all of us, we forget things over time, right? We know it and we forget it, and we relearn it and we forget it, and that's okay. This is my family here. You can see I married a T-Rex. And so my son's strength is, and I want to make sure if everyone else can hear me okay. My son's strength is directing. He likes to put on these little plays and shows and direct other people in kind of making these little kind of plays. But he doesn't really like company. And so we found a way to merge those things so that if we have company, my husband and I like to have company, then we ask adults to volunteer to be his actors, and then he can direct them. So this is us having a gathering in our home. You can see my son wearing his director t-shirt, also his noise canceling headphones, and adults will sign up and say, I'm willing to follow directions, and then he can direct them in these little plays. So I share this because there were times where we were really worried and anxious about what the present or future was going to look like for our family, and we weren't helping in those moments, right? It didn't add any value. It happens. We all have these feelings, but it didn't add any value. But when we could spin and say, you know what? Let's look at his strengths. Let's look at his preferences. How can we leverage that in a way where we can all have a good quality of life? And now we all get to have a party and we all get to, make the most out of it. So really finding ways to make things work and have optimism about the present and the future goes a really long way. So this research I'm really excited about as well. This is from Leah Waters. And if you're interested in a great book for the summer as well, it's The Strength Switch. And so The Strength Switch by Leah Waters. And she provides all this great research on the value of having a strength-based approach. So this is in our homes, in our residence, wherever we're living, whoever we're living with, whoever we're working with, focusing on what everyone can do well, and even sometimes leveraging those strengths into areas that would otherwise be considered challenges or weaknesses. So in the example I gave with my son, he typically wouldn't be happy with a group of people in our house, but because we can leverage his strength into that area, all of a sudden it's something he looks forward to. And then of course he takes breaks and does a lot of other things to make that time good for him. And so if you look here, having a strength-based approach reduces the risk for depression, greater likelihood of staying at work. So, at work, are we giving each other positive feedback? Are we focusing on each other's strengths? Or do people feel like they come to work and it's always about what they're not doing well enough, right? The individuals you support, are we always giving them lots of positive feedback on their effort and their outcomes? Or do they feel like every day is just more about what they need to grow and what they need to work on? And so you see here, smoother transitions, better performance, academic achievement. So it really goes across all ages, all settings, this idea of leveraging a strength-based approach. So I have a brief video for us. I'm going to have you meet this family. Terry and I met at an event in trying to bring together family partnerships for a school district many years ago. And this is her son, Judah. And I'm going to show this brief video. She's going to speak a little bit in the context of school, but I really want you to replace the word school for any and all other settings. And really at the end, what they're talking about is him getting an internship. So you could be thinking about all the different ways that you support people in their independence. And what we're really going to be focusing on is this idea that families know their children, even their adult children. They know them well, and we want to leverage strengths. So Terry, when I hear you say policies matter, practices matter, and we need to have some consistency across the way schools do things, but that it also really matters to know how that family functions. It makes me think of how these days we learn a lot about cultural sensitivity and being relevant across cultures and households and families. So how could schools, do better with that? How would they know more about their families and what's valuable to their families? Like, there's a very strong thread that drives you and your family of spirituality. And, for the school to know that I assume, would help them in the way that they work with you. Could you share more about that idea of understanding the children you serve and the families you serve from a strength base?
Absolutely. And so in our family, so faith is a big thing in our family. And so in fact, Judah was raised on faith principles. So as I spend time, or when the school spends time getting to know, I don't know, we can do those times in a meet and greet, or we can have, I think schools could have like a gathering of chatting around coffee or something around maybe food or something that will allow the district to get to know the family for who they are. Because with Judah, anything along the faith line, he's going to soar. And see, you can take faith and it can be spread over every discipline, but the foundation and the core would be faith. But if they don't know that, or we haven't had a chance to share that with them, then they will be assigning different projects across the curriculum, but not hitting to the core of where they need to be for him to show, oh, wow, you know how to do that. I remember we did a piece where, and he needed to understand about a project you were working on, an internship, and it was dealing with mirrors. And so with Judah, because he's taught faith, what we did, I looked up what the word was and I shared it with him. I said, okay, we can do that. And so what we did is we took the faith-based scriptures, put it into Google, and then clicked on the word image. And it gave us a picture or a mural, if you will, of what that scripture was. And then he was able to elaborate on that and validate that he knew about that project without me even being there. He was able to do it independently. Once I took his strength, right, attached it to what their criteria was, and then showed him how to deliver it in an independent way.
Awesome. And I believe that has to do with an interview you had, Judah. How did you do in that interview?
I did great in that interview. I answered the questions that she asked me, and she was really nice about it. And that's how I got, after we through those questions, and that's how I got hired for the job. And I was very excited about that. It was a wonderful, humbling experience, and it's just a blessing.
So you got the job.
Yes.
Awesome. So Judah has, I love the clapping, thank you. Judah has intellectual disabilities, and he and his mother struggled for quite a while to have him get the supports he needed. So she did a great job explaining how he has all these strengths that were being untapped as well. And so the good news is he's in college right now and working on his associate's degree and getting really much more appropriate support in college than he even did in high school. And so just be thinking about all these unique ways that once we know a person well, we can help them tap into that power that they have and leverage it into all these other places that maybe otherwise they would have struggled more with. So I love that story. So thank you for letting me share a little bit about Terry and Judah here with you. And Terry's story makes me think of this ladder of participation. So Roger Hart created this ladder of participation a long time ago, and it was originally designed as the ladder of student participation. And so this idea that in schools, but really in any settings, we want to make sure that young people have a voice. They have voice and choice, which we'll talk more about here in a moment. But I want us to apply this also to our families and caregivers. How much do they have voice and choice in the things that we do? So in whatever kind of agency you're in whatever kind of work you do, I'd ask you to consider, where are the families, right? Do they have a say? Do we have meetings with them? Do we ask for their input? Are they able to help us not only with their family member, but maybe to give us a little bit of input and insight into how other families might be feeling as well? And I'll tell you, the number one thing I hear when I'm asked to work with sites around family partnerships is they'll say, the families aren't engaged. And it's almost stated as if it's an issue within the family, right? That these are unengaged families, like it's a label that they carry. But what we actually know is that engagement is all about the environment. And so if we own that through a sort of response to intervention model, the way you use your tiered systems, then instead we would rephrase that as, we have not yet been able to successfully engage these families. And then we would apply our strategies and tools, sometimes even your tools of choice, that would be able to help get those families better engaged. So you see here, there's a continuum or a ladder of participation. Down at the bottom, we wouldn't even consider those things participation. That's like asking people to show up, asking them to sign papers. They don't really know what's going on. They don't really have input or a voice. All the way up to the top where it's family members who are initiating the change, family members feeling safe enough with us that they can come to us and say what they think might work better, what their opinion is on things. And then, any of those top couple of steps are still good. So even if it's staff initiated, but we're connecting with the families and letting them help us make decisions, it's going to go a long way, not just in terms of engaging with them and partnering with them, but also in getting better outcomes, right? Because as Terry said, she does know her son. And it's possible that you could have done all kinds of interviews with Judah, gotten all kinds of information, and still not really known that about him. So I just want to give you a moment for a personal, private reflection. You can type about any of this in the chat box if you'd like. But otherwise, just be letting yourself think, how much do families or caregivers have a say or have any voice or choice in the way things happen in your place of work? How might you increase family or caregiver voice and choice when it comes to decision making? And there's a question here, but it's also really a tip or a strategy, which is, are there ways to use a couple family members to help us engage others? So very often, if you even get one family member engaged, you can talk with them about what do they think would make it more likely that other families would engage with you. So starting small is fine. Remember that quote in the beginning? Use what you have, start where you are. So even if it's one or two families or caregivers who are with you right now, how could we work with them to try to figure out and get more feedback? And I so appreciate folks sharing in the chat box right now. Give you a little bit of time to reflect. Please read and check out what other people are writing in here as well. I love that. Thank you, Teresa, for sharing that. That is so big. On that point, I can't tell you how many times my son's received supports, and I do this for a living, right? But no group has ever asked me as his parent if I would help them, bring my expertise into the setting or help them engage with other families. And it's okay. I would never push that on anyone, but I always think like it's unfortunate for them that they could have had this like free resource that was untapped. And there are so many stories like that out there, right? Like Teresa there. I mean, they could have so benefited from your expertise, not just for your husband, but for all the other people there. And so that's what I often find is it's just win-win when we try to get people's input and voice into the work that we're doing. So thank you for all of you who have been courageous and have sort of made your voices heard where you can. Thank you for the reflection about how you could make more space, more room for family members in your work. I appreciate all of that. And, it turns out that the current situation is definitely, when it comes to families, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. So you'll see here, it's kind of a big quote, but it's one that is so powerful. I really like to share this, that staff leaders from all youth serving, but it's really adult serving systems as well, including education, mental health, child welfare, juvenile justice, disabilities, primary health care, and others, are recognizing the paradigm of professional experts telling others what they should be doing is not effective. And this directive hierarchical model suggests superiority of the professional over the people we're supporting, promotes distance in the relationship and negative reactions and feelings, and decreases the likelihood of positive change occurring. And yet, this is how it is in most places. Families and the person who's receiving care often feel like they have very little voice in what's happening to them. And of course, it should be more often what's happening with them. So we heard from a parent talking about family voice and really that stakeholder voice as well, all the people who know and care about this person. Now let's hear from an individual who's making the same point, that if you're receiving support, you should have voice and choice in what that support looks like.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Ivanova. Today's topic is nothing about us without us. What does this mean? It basically means that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities should get to be at the table where the decisions being made that affect our lives. For many people with IDD, we are not invited to the table. A lot of decisions are made about us, but without our own input. This is a problem. And so the self-advocacy movement is very passionate about making sure that we are always at the table when there are policies that are going to be changed that affect our lives, how we get care services, how we get supports in the community, get a job in the community, get to even live in the community. All these decisions, a lot of times, are made, and we don't even get to have a say. And so we really want to promote that self-advocates, people with IDD, we have that we know our interests. And we know what we want, and we need help and support in self-determination. Meaning that if there's an agency or a organization that serves people with disabilities, you need to. It's good to make sure that you have self-advocates on your boards, because if you don't, then you don't have the people that are directly impacted by your agency at the table. And that's a real problem, because that may make you make decisions that are not good for our community. But if you have self-advocates at the table that could help you make those decisions and could help make sure that our input and how it affects our life is respected, that helps everyone out and empowers people with disabilities to be able to direct our own lives. Now, I would like to go and speak with some other self-advocates on what they think about nothing about us without us. What does nothing about us without us mean to you?
It means that we have a voice and we get to strip that voice to our legislators. It's another word for what I do is helping one another to help themselves. It's in a way that's saying, hey, you are a great person. You can stick up what you both truly believe in, and also a great listener.
To me, nothing about us without us is not just words, it's an inspiration to tell people it's like you can't do things without us. So it's like we are equal citizens to this community as well as anybody else.
I think it is the most important thing we can be saying to people and helping them to understand. Nobody else, regardless of disability, would want decisions made about them and about our communities without their opinions.
I hope that you have been able to learn from this video on the importance of nothing about us without us. Have a great day.
I love that video. Thank you all for your feedback in the chat box. When you get this PowerPoint, you will see the links. They're embedded in the PowerPoint, but they're also in the notes part. So we hope you share that video far and wide with others as well. Thank you all so much for that feedback. I so appreciate it. And I've had so many of these experiences in my life where a bunch of professionals are together and we're doing good work and we're really well intended. And then the best part of the meeting is always when you turn to the person who's receiving support, and they always drop this knowledge and wisdom in these ways that, just amazing and brilliant. And it's like no one else thought of that, and so that's really easy to have happen. And so I'm a big advocate that everyone should have a voice, even in our own homes. Do we give young people a voice? And even staff, right? I love what you guys were saying in the chat box. There are people who know individuals best, and yet sometimes they're not at the meeting or they don't get a say, and yet they know the person the best. So I thank you all for interacting with each other and sharing great ideas there in the chat box. A great book for you or anyone that you know who struggles with anxiety is The Compassionate Mind. And from The Compassionate Mind, I pull out this quote. Bowlby helped us to recognize that from the day we're born, our brains are biologically designed to respond to the care and kindness of others. Indeed, his work has stimulated a revolution in our understanding of the importance of affection at many stages of life. I became convinced that whatever intervention you used, you had to ensure that the patient or person experienced it with feelings of kindness and warmth. And what greater act of kindness is there than to turn to someone and give them the floor and ask them, how are you feeling? What do you need? I'm here. How can we help support you? And truly giving them that voice. And so, what we've talked about today in this session is this idea of quality of life for all. We've gone into this idea of social emotional wellness for everyone, including expressing our emotions and regulating emotions. We talked about the idea of how important it is that caregivers have optimism, that regardless of the label, the disability, the challenges, and the strengths that people bring, that we can have good lives, we can have good quality of life. And this idea that when we leverage people's strengths, we get the best out of them. They contribute the best to their environment. And that amazing things can happen when we open that door and really find out what are people's preferences and strengths and leverage those. And then, of course, it comes down to voice and choice of individuals we support, and as well as the families who support them. So I would like to give you a chance to talk about this a little bit in a breakout room right now. So we're going to have about, I would say, 8 to 10 minutes, depending on how long we want at the end for Q&A. Let's say 10 minutes in breakout rooms. And I would love in your breakout rooms for you to talk a little bit about strategies that might improve the quality of life of the individuals that you and your group support. And that includes all of these strategies that we've gotten into a little bit today. So how do we increase family optimism? How do we improve the leveraging of strength-based approaches? How do we leverage preferences? And then how do we do a better job of really partnering with families and caregivers so that everyone feels like they have voice and choice? So please enjoy your breakout session. When you come back, we're going to be wrapping up together and we'll do some large group Q&A and conversation. And thank you for coming back in from your breakouts. I know you were not done talking. I'm sure you were right in the middle of things when we pulled you in. So I apologize about that feature. Whereas if we were all together, we could like see that you were ready to come back. We have a couple minutes to be together now before we wrap up the session. I would love to hear from some folks. So you're welcome to type into the box anything that someone shared in your breakout room that you loved. You can give some shout outs to people. And if anyone would like to unmute, we'd love to hear your voice. If you want to comment on any of these strategies we talked about today and how they improve everyone's quality of life. It's okay to have a little bit of wait time. If you would like to talk, you just unmute whenever you're ready. And if you'd like to be the one to share instead in the chat box, that's also fine. We will end on time, so don't feel like you'll make it run over if you share.
Well, this is Terry Warner, and I would love for Robert to kind of mention a little bit about his conversation regarding peer support. So I just thought it was so informative and such an amazing idea that I think he can explain it better than I. So Robert, I don't know, would you be willing? Put him on the spot. If not, I can talk about it.
I love the invitation, Terry. So Robert's thinking about it, right? And
yeah, I'm good. I can definitely talk about it.
Thank you.
I have experience working in the community with different behavioral health agencies. And one thing that I noticed that they always had working in case management was like a peer specialist, somebody who had a mental health diagnosis and would work with their peers and, would do the same type of work, but would be an advocate and a reliable source for them if they chose. One thing I noticed in DD, aside from, one or two advocacy specialists with like a regional office, there's not a whole lot of that out in the community that I've seen so far. And I think that would be great. Having peers that can work with individuals, that can work with teams, that can work with the regional offices, just to have input and have more of a reach, because we don't see it as much.
I love it. Robert, thank you. Anyone want to comment on what Robert just shared? You're getting claps and lots of love on that, and I appreciate that so much. It's a form of sharing power, right? And it's challenging to share power and collectively, individually. And so bringing people into the fold and letting them actually speak at the meetings and actually not just be there and talk, but actually influence decisions, right? Robert, you've probably seen it along that continuum, right? Of how often do the professionals actually turn to that person and let them help influence decision making, which is huge. So lots of folks are commenting in the chat. We appreciate that. Any last comment? Anyone else want to unmute?
I will say I used to be the advocacy specialist in Kansas City, and that position obviously was eliminated. Really think that was a shame. Really think we need to bring something like that back to the regional offices so that we have like a liaison for individuals to be able to speak up for themselves, for those that don't know how yet, and for them to have a voice.
Love it. I love that that's going to be our last word today. So, Lori, thank you for sharing. Robert, Terry, thanks for throwing the mic to Robert. I love that you did that. Everyone, thanks to your comments in the chat box. I appreciate all of you. I'm grateful for you and the work that you do. Expressing gratitude in and of itself is a strategy that really helps with quality of life. Just expressing gratitude makes you feel better. And then, of course, it makes the person that you give the gratitude towards feel better as well. When you get this PowerPoint, you can see an article at the bottom you can link on and learn more about the incredible strength and value of expressing gratitude. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn this to Kathleen. It was great being with you.
Thank you, Kim. I'm so